Hey everybody, this is Beard, and this video is going to be a follow-up on the progress with the dynamic Raytrace Scaling for the Icarus shaders. I've changed the debug view a little bit. The bottom is just looks like it's showing different, but on the right, the bright red meter is the percentage of pixels being ray traced, and the dark red is what the meter was last time, where it's showing kind of like an exponential of it. So I've found some flaws and some good things about this. In the gameplay video I just posted, I was trying to make it suffer to kind of see its flaws, and that's given me some progress on it. So I kind of want to discuss the strengths and weaknesses I found about it so far. Strengths is that running the denoiser means we don't have static on plants anymore, nor do we on entities, which means I can improve their lighting. Here it's using a very basic. You can see he's mostly black in the lighting because I've got them mostly not using the same lighting as everything else, but I'll be able to now. I'll switch it back off to compare when I can compare materials in a little bit. Another weakness is things in my hand ghost horribly. You can see in the top left of the image that is a reprojection issue. So that will be something I can solve pretty easily. Water is another issue because it's such a smooth surface that trying to resolve it from a higher resolution image or lower resolution image, you can see it just looks like frosted glass. It does not have a good time. So there's a few things I want to try to solve about that. I've tried a few methods so far. I'm really trying to avoid doing a full res trace of water, but I easily could, and that would solve it. Here you can see if I do it kind of more like a render and just accumulate it, we would get that ghosting when we would move, and the image wouldn't be resolved properly for gameplay, so that's not viable. So I think what I'm going to do is end up doing a closer to high-res real-time trace. I can show what that would look like. This is what the water would look like doing that. This is with it just doing like full-res water from like a fallback. But currently this is with it also doing everything else for us because I haven't separated them out, so I'd have to do it as a separate pass, and that would down the efficiency from going up to like over 1,000 times less pixels being traced to potentially being only 200 times less pixels being traced, which that's still a good increase of efficiency. So here we are without denoising, and just to show the what the shader looked like before, let's look at some grass and some leaves. Oh, I did turn off the temporal accumulation on clouds, so excuse that that's going to look staticky. One of the other drawbacks of the denoising was some extra ghosting, so I disabled the TA over the entire scene, and now I'm going to apply it just to clouds separately and just to the lighting, because realistically it was only there for the clouds and the lighting. I might need to be in a different type of spot. Let's look underground too, and this is without the denoising. Oh, I need to turn it the old TA back on to get a fair comparison. So what I was doing before is running the lighting full res like this, and then just stacking temporal accumulation over the entire scene. When I put on these options, we get really good materials. Because the light just behaves really well. This is still doing a very low amount of tracing. But the entities have simplified lighting based off of flood fill, and then just a little bit of tracing that's simplified in order to make them not just be completely noisy or ghosted. But you can see we get some bugs like this guy here where he looks red. That's from a flood fill error. But if we would go into something like this, it's very responsive and the reflections are all perfectly crisp. Every pixel is perfectly traced, and does a really intense lighting simulation that I'm really pleased with. But the mobs weren't great, and it's just eats performance. So let's switch over to the. Let me find that other cave too, so we can compare splotchiness. Because there's one cave is really splotchy, so it's a good place to show that weakness. To see here's the clouds without noise too. And how the water looked before trying to do this stuff. So this room is good and splotchy. So here we are, and you can see this is just going to be good lighting because it's just doing every pixel. This is doing on the hybrid, so it's also mixing in flood fill, which gives us a little bit of a pulse off of the torch, because I'm doing a very quick flood fill because it's generally not used. Let's turn it off. Okay, so then this is doing only traced lighting, and see that looks a lot better. This is my preferred way to play. I can actually turn on textures and the reflections too. Hold on a second. Like this would be my preferred method for gameplay. It's much more immersive, and the lighting is all traced and simulated and bouncing all over the place. But it eats the frames. Let's look at what we're getting here. We're getting 34 FPS, and it's doing a lot of recursive bouncing of light all around and everything. So the main goal of the denoising is to speed that up. So what it's doing is we're running the lighting at a lower resolution, and then we're upscaling it. I need to adjust some of the stuff. Let me turn back on the debug views to kind of show this. Once our FPS is meeting our goal, it should start increasing the quality. But you see that gauge is not going up at all. I need to put this a lot lower. These numbers are off. Where it's just being too aggressive with the quality cuts. So here I'm telling it to only get up to 30 FPS, and it's getting up to 50. So those numbers need adjusting. And then now it's adjusting the amount of tracing on the scene to try to keep it that. So this room is a really bad example. Like I said, this is extremely splotchy when it's doing on a low res because the lights are so spaced out and there's so much open air. So this really shows it kind of suck, which I think is important because for progress I've got to do that. There's a lot of gears and switches inside of the denoising for me to adjust, and I need to kind of play with them. Let me do a more realistic show of settings. So here's on the default settings with the denoising added. And there is some stuff I want to work out. There's some warble I've noticed, like a temporal warble. Let me put the debug view back on so you can see what it's doing. So we've got the rays being traced at the bottom, and then the top is like the final lighting that's applied. If I didn't already say it, right now it's only doing 8-bit per channel color in the denoising. I need to change that. There's also a little bit of a warble and instability. You see there, when it's out of well, it's at a really low amount of pixels being traced. Look at the bottom right. That is it's a more effect from the sampling because I'm doing a texel fetch, and I need to switch that to like interpixel sampling, and then I think that'll go away. Which makes me want to be careful about the color format I use. It definitely, when it's doing this low of tracing, you could see the low amount of pixels there. It gets really splotchy in an environment like this, and it suffers. There's some adjustments that I want to change. One of them is how well it resolves versus the original capture, like for complete stability versus like resolving to a better image. And I need to kind of tune all that to get it better. But I think for trying to get up to just faster gameplay speed, I think this does a pretty good job at getting the lighting there for action scenes. But when it's this low, it definitely has problems. If we do here and only let it get to like a quarter of the pixels, it's gonna have a less splotchiness to it, but still got some issues. So it's gonna be a matter of trade-offs of like getting the FPS stability and dealing with it. This scene looks so bad, which is really surprising. I must have changed something because it didn't look as bad last time. But I mean, this is how you make progress. Is you look at it, you play with it, you see what's wrong, and you make adjustments. I still think it's viable. I think the main next steps are get HDR back into it, and fix the sampling to get rid of that warble, and then kind of tune the parameters to make it hold on to the image differently. Because if I even just change, let's see, one of these, let's see, if I change this, it cuts off how much feedback there is in the denoising. So then the final image is going to be a lot more crisper and have a lot more detail. But you see it still has a little more warble to it from the sampling. So I'm going to try to fix that. And I'll find the balance on all these things on how to do it. I can also just not stack feedback. And then this is what that looks like in the image, where it keeps much more clarity. You see we've still got that warble from the sampling. There's a lot to adjust about it. So I'm pretty much gonna go through and play with all the parameters, add a lot more gears to it, and see what works as far as getting better image quality and stability. And see, that's pretty bad there. So here, looking at it while still doing full res, this should be more responsive, but it still has some issues. Hold on, let me do something else here. And a lot of this moves like a continuously variable transmission to try to kind of really get stuff for a balance between filling the scene in quickly and then adding more detail back in. Let me switch over to doing better quality again. So those are the issues. Let me look at the debug view again, and I want to show what this does good for mobs. And I'm going to let it go much lower in the quality. Because the main purpose of this is to gain FPS. So here's the rendering, like almost no pixels. You can see that bright red gauge. And let's look at let me get a spot that has like a little bit of a crevice to get some bounce light. That's obvious. See, we've got a little bit of a light leak going on there still too. Let me find a better spot, and I'll drop a few more mobs. I might just do it in a cave. That's probably the best way to do it. So dynamic lighting still works fine. That's definitely not an issue with the denoising, even with it being really low quality. It'll update where he goes, and they do a pretty good job. Let's see who else we've got here. Zombie. Let's switch him over. By default with the denoising, it gets rid of the static they would have. They would always have a little bit of static. But I can also switch over now the lighting that they use. By default, I've had them using flood fill. I can turn that to be less and turn on full lighting for them, and then they should match the scene better. You could see it getting really splotchy when the quality is that low. But I mean, that's a trade-off I guess you'd make if you want the quality that low. And forgive me, the animations on these guys are probably going to be busted. I think I'm using the wrong version on Patrick still. Yeah, but there's a little bit of a ghosting on the lighting, just as an artifact of how this works too, because we don't have motion vectors in Iris, so it's kind of trying to use what was there last frame and see how valid it is. But this means I can also get bounce light on entities better than we could before. So if I put down a chicken or something here, see, he's actually getting that bounce light. Tell the debug view at least, might be able to tell the white sheep. Where the color of the grass is actually going to light him up from the bottom. that's probably about it for this. So after a first test of it, I think letting it run super low, of course, gets it really splotchy. And I'm gonna have to just kind of try to have to find a balance for things. Overall, I still think it's a viable technique. It does stabilize the frame rates. It definitely looks fine in action sequences. And that's the goal of it, is to make kind of all these light bounces still work with like stable FPS and not just looking like static. So I think it definitely accomplishes the goals. And the trade-offs so far are that I need to resolve ghosting in items, and that there's some warble in the sampling. And then the extra benefits are we get rid of noise on plants. And if I turn on some scene TA, we could probably get even less in the leaves. And the other benefit, of course, is that we're getting real-time global illumination with only ray tracing. Like here, we're ray tracing like just such a small fraction of the pixels, and it's a pretty stable image. I think adding the HD, getting rid of the warble, are the main things. And then like I said, the water, I need to either do it with a separate pass that would stay high res, but have that adjustable so you could do it not full res. That's something kind of in between. And I'm excited for this. I really am. I still think it's going to be a good move. It's just, of course, if you're saying I'm going to trace 1,000 times less pixels, there's going to be compromises in the quality. So I'll use it at a more realistic number. And like I said, I think end of day it would end up getting closer to maybe 200 times once I add that extra pass back in for clean water. But let's let this go stupid again. And just appreciate that it's doing anything with that low of pixels. Like, so if we look at that bottom right, the red gauge that we cannot see because it's a single pixel, that's the amount of pixels, the percentage of them being traced in the scene. And it's still resolving this much detail for the lighting. So of course it's going to be splotchy at times and have some issues. But it's doing something. You see there, like, it resolves. And I could probably adjust that time too. So there it's splotchy, and then after a little bit it resolves. But in most cases you're not going to run it that low. I think anyone who is trying to squeeze that many FPS is going to kind of be okay with it. But yeah, I appreciate feedback. More feedback appreciated. And yeah, because see, this is bad. If I look at the lighting data, it looks bad and splotchy. See if I sit here for a second, it resolves. And like I said, I can adjust that time. But I think that for just getting it to into gameplay, if this lets somebody else play with lighting that they appreciate, then I think it's a good move and it's worth it. Let's go back to something more realistic, so I don't close on a note that makes me sad that it looks bad. So here's what they're doing. That small of an amount of pixels. And then let's go to native rendering. I'm always going to be, I need to turn the TA back on. I'm trying to, I'm in the middle of making stuff different, so I'm kind of, it's broken a little bit. So then here's native rendering. The native rendering is always going to be my favorite, but you can even just feel here the FPS goes down with it, even though it keeps more per pixel detail. Yeah, so that's kind of like an in-depth review of the progress on this so far, and the actual like application and adjustments I'm gonna have to make. So I'm gonna put some more time into tuning this and getting it to be effective, figure out what the actual good limits of it are that don't just blow it out and make it super splotchy and ghosty and warbly, and kind of work all those details and gears to just make it work right. But I hope everybody's having a good week, and thank everybody for the interest in the project and the feedback. I'll talk to y'all soon.